afternoon, everyone. My name is Radostina Primova from the Center for the Study of Democracy, and I have the great pleasure and honor today to moderate the first part of our final conference on supporting consumer ownership in renewable energies and the challenges to be met, which is taking place in a hybrid form here in Turin. We have basically an exciting conference in front of us. In the aftermath of the climate summit in Glasgow, we've seen how important inclusivity and citizen participation for the transformation process. Could you please turn off the background noises, as I'm hearing already some background noises. And with this in mind, European citizens have been so far excluded from this process. Currently, with the Fit for 55 package, citizens' energy communities can have also a major role in fulfilling the more ambitious EU climate and energy target for 2030 that foresee basically the 55% of reduction of emissions, and in particularly vulnerable consumers. That brings us very close to our topic today, basically how to enhance the democratic participations and involve citizens through renewable energy communities and more innovative models in the energy transition process, so they take part as active prosumers instead of just consumers. Our main conference will focus on two major parts. First of all, today we'll present the lessons learned from our pilot cities and follower cities. We have been piloting an innovative financial model that will be presented today by our colleagues, how to foster the participation of energy communities. And today we also have invited the representatives of different municipalities and pilot cities to share these lessons learned, the challenges, but also some of the achievements ahead. Then the next topic that we will discuss, which is a major one in the course of the transposition of the new Renewable Energy Directive and the Internal Energy Market Directive, is how to make basically citizens from consumers to active prosumers and create an enabling regulatory framework. Finally, tomorrow we will have already two other panels which will talk about opportunities and synergies on how to use electricity sharing also for renewable energy communities. Then we'll already wrap up with some roundtable discussion and also what are the business opportunities for private actors. So I'm very glad that I'm joined by a very diverse, geographically diverse, but also in terms of expertise, today group of European and national policymakers, experts, from different parts in Europe, think tanks, people from the private sector, and very importantly, different local actors and municipalities that are driving the energy transition ahead. Before we start the discussion, just wanted to mention that we want to foster a very active participation of you. That's why I would like to ask you to use the chat box and already put already to paste your questions in the basically sections, questions and answers. After each panel, we'll have a questions and answers sessions to make comments and questions. And please use this function so that we'll at the end choose the questions. I would like now to give the floor to Patrizia Lombardi, to Professor Patrizia Lombardi, who is our also local hosts in Turin. I would like to thank her very much for her efforts. She's Vice Rector of Politecnico di Torino and already Deputy Rector of Politecnico di Torino, and has been heading the Inter-University Department of Urban and Regional Studies and Planning. She is also president of the Italian Network of Universities for Sustainable Development and in charge of sustainable campus management of the university since 2015. So I have the great pleasure to give the word to Patrizia Lombardi, who will Now we will make the welcoming remarks and in the introduction into our SCORE project. It has been a very exciting journey so far, and I look forward to an interesting discussion.
Thank you very much, Radostina, for this nice introduction. And welcome to all of our participants to this final conference of our project supporting consumer ownership in renewable energies. In my role of vice rector, it is quite a pity that I don't have you all here physically, but as we know, it's important to be safety and keep opportunity also in joining conferences, important, crucial like this one, in a blended way. So really, I don't see you all, but I feel I have in front of me a very crowded platform of experts and interested people and colleagues and authorities as well in front of me, just attending this conference, because the conference, the final conference of this exciting project that we have started in 2018 has produced a number of outcomes and deliverables that make me very, very proud, especially because they are very close to the current need of communities that are really demanding this shift into a real taking on board of renewable energies from a production and consumption viewpoint. So it has been really exciting to work with all these partners very intensively in the last 3 years, even if with my role I had not many chances to be really active, and my team supported me a lot in the role of connecting also the Italian pilot study for this project. You see here is the larger consortium that is not made only by universities, research center, but also association, but also companies, cooperative association, and so forth. So it has been really an exciting journey into our European Union context that has provided, and in this conference we will talk about really the result. Having a great coordinator that is our friend Jens Lowitzsch, difficult surname as always for an Italian speaker, but he by the way, speaks a wonderful Italian, and Jens has been so supportive and so over-visioned expert in conducting all the work packages and the work of coordinator in this large consortium. So thank you very much, Jens, from my side, and I believe all the partners. We had taken on board the meaning of energy transition, not only as the avoiding use of energy resources from fossil fuel, but mainly on this consciousness of energy consumption by people, as well as energy efficiency of a new way of producing energy. And this has been also translating into a model for co-ownership of renewable energy for consumers, prosumers, in 3 pilot studies, a pilot region where you see Italy also as is represented, and at the pilot study in the Valle Susa. With a detailed number of objectives that are a declination and a more precise identification of this general aim, which I'm not going to read all, but that I'm sure you will take on board, because the idea of avoiding the energy usage from fossil fuel is something that is a part of our cooperative agreement, and that the project has been able to take on board, but in particular to make it operational, considering connecting with the communities, and particular side and particular part of communities, those that have less choices to be active prosumer, like women, or like those more economically less rich, and had the opportunity to be part of the experiment and the opportunity to create these energy communities, considering especially this inclusion and this just transition, socially and ethically broad and inclusive, is very important, and is part of the project, and is part of the model of CSO that has been tested and has been considered in the project. Is the core, is the main focus with this new business model that is behind the operational and implementation of the energy community from this perspective. So a number of examples that we have also delivered, and we have presented in national conferences before this final conference, and that will be discussed as a result today and tomorrow, with all the specific features that make this model possible, and that consider exactly the opportunity for an extension of the pilot to all Europe. Even from the Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals perspective, the project has touched and contributed to the implementation of a number of goals that are not only relating to energy and the goal 7, but mostly on the goal 10, as I mentioned, the goal 11 for the cities, the 13 about climate actions, goal 15 on life on land, and goal 3 on good health and well-being. We believe that through the deliverables and result from the SCORE project, we have been able to give an important implementation and contribution to the Sustainable Development Goal and the Agenda 2030. And so in my introduction, short introduction to this presentation, to this conference, in addition to what has been already mentioned by the chair. I really would like to remind all speakers to consider the 4 topics which are behind the spirit and the mission of this conference. So what lesson can be drawn from the SCORE pilot and the other follower city project, especially from the local authorities that have to implement it? How can individual consumers be encouraged to become prosumer and engage in energy efficiency? And what opportunities and synergies can energy electricity sharing provide for this renewable energy? And what business opportunities can they provide for professional actors from the energy sector? I believe that in these 2.5 days of today and tomorrow morning, we will discover much of this interesting topics and answer to some of these questions, thanks to your participation, your expertise, and the opportunity and willing to share all this with all of us. Thank you and enjoy the conference. Bye.
Many thanks, Patrizia, for this inspiring introduction. Now we'll start the first panel with actually the actual lessons learned for the SCORE pilots and follower cities projects for municipalities. Is one of the driving forces behind the project. Professor Jens Lowitzsch, who is Kelso professor at European University Viadrina, and also, as already Patrizia mentioned, the coordinator of our SCORE project. He is specialized in comparative law, European business law, and European legal policy. However, some of his major topics of interest are distributive justice, employee financial participation, green transformation, and privatization. Jens, thank you. I would like to personally thank you for all your dedication in leading us through this journey and already launching so this great project. And so Jens will provide an overview, a legal comparative overview, and we'll talk about how SCORE has been implemented, some of the legal challenges. And so Jens, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear Radostina, for these warm words, and a very warm welcome also from my side to the participants of this conference. I will try to be short in my overview of the SCORE project, and what I would like to focus on are actually problems and lessons learned, and I will try to embed them in what, as Radostina already mentioned, in this comparative perspective. So to start with, just a few words of the context of this project. Energy systems of tomorrow, what do I mean by that? We are confronted with a dramatic change of the energy systems, which are in the future going to be rather renewable energy clusters, and that brings with it a change in the structure and the architecture in the design of these clusters. So we will, on the one hand side, see a variety of actors. So in other words, heterogeneity of the active market participants will be a key to the next decades for the success of this energy transition. And together with this heterogeneity, there come 3 important structural key characteristics. One is the bidirectionality of energy flows in these systems. So it's not from the socket to the consumer, but it goes both ways, actually, when the consumer becomes prosumer. Secondly, we will see flexibility measures such as storage, aggregation, and the like, which of course pose, especially for energy communities, on the one hand side, challenges, but which are of course also, as we will see through the conference, are real opportunities, depending on the project. We will, as a fourth characteristic, also of course see that information and communication technologies are facilitating all these processes with regard to smart metering, to smart grids and the like. And this, of course, brings me to the second main challenge of the SCORE project and of the decades to come, and that is governance. And so these new systems need new rules, and especially the question of new partners that are involved need new regulations, and that is what the Clean Energy Package brought us. Is most importantly the Renewable Energy Directive, the recast, and the Internal Electricity Market Directive. The focus of SCORE against this background, against the structural changes and the new governance rules, is the question of transaction. In other words, the contractual arrangements of all these partners that are now going to cooperate on the energy markets. And this, of course, in a nutshell, is the question of what business model for what type of project. SCORE advocates the so-called consumer stock ownership plan, which is a specific business model which we see as a prototype, especially for those of energy communities, especially in those cases where you have very different actors like municipalities cooperating with individual citizens or energy companies. Now, again, as a quick note on the background, this new regulatory framework had, of course, many legislative acts. We are focusing here on RED II and IAMD, the Internal Electricity Market Directive and Renewable Energy Directive. And what is important, I don't go into any details here, you will be able to download my slides, is that these two directives foresee two different types of energy communities. One, the Renewable Energy Directive, of course, foresees renewable energy communities, logically, which are focusing on renewables, but other than electricity can also involve other types of energy. And citizen energy communities is the prototype model that is put forward by the Internal Electricity Market Directive, which are similar. However, there are two pronounced differences that I would like to stress here. One is that, of course, the Internal Electricity Market Directive exclusively focuses on electricity. And the second one is that these two sets of regulations have different aims, and the Renewable Energy Directive especially is one that supports renewable energy, and for that reason there's a specific enabling framework that after transposition should provide preferential rules to ensure equal footing of these renewable energy communities. And the question, of course, and we will discuss this later in the conference, is how do these two forms of energy communities relate to, and for which type of projects, which type of communities are best suited. The challenge, and this is one of the main results of the project, is really to include heterogeneous co-investors. And the reason why this is so challenging is because the new regulation does not compulsory foresee renewable energy communities or citizen energy communities, but it allows also other types of initiatives. And that means that it is an opt-in mechanism. So only those energy projects, renewable energy projects or other projects that qualify as a renewable energy community or as a citizen energy community will benefit from the enabling network. And a second privilege is from the privilege of electricity or energy sharing within these communities. And that means that a contrario, the number of energy communities set up after these rules will depend on their ability to involve heterogeneous co-investors key to the success of renewable energy clusters. And that, of course, also means that only if the renewable energy communities are attractive enough for also commercial actors on the market, they will be set up in large numbers. In other words, the question whether in 5 years from now we will have 500 energy communities, 5,000 or 50,000 of both types will to a large extent depend on the question whether the conditions that legislators in the member states of the European Union will set are attractive enough, because there is also a price that qualifying as renewable energy community or citizen energy communities brings, and that is that the governance model foresees, in the case of the renewable energy communities, local control, and that none of the shareholders owns more than 33%. And in the case of citizen energy communities, that again, it is the main local actors or the main non-professional actors that retain control. That being said, this is also the reason why we launched the CSOP as a model that can actually include these different actors under the roof of a CSOP, as it is a trustee model, and I will dwell on this in a moment, that allows to align the interests of the different actors under a common business model. How does the CSOP in a nutshell look like? You could describe it as an extension of the co-op model based on a trusteeship. So instead of consumers becoming individual owners of a renewable energy plant, they become shareholders in an operating company, but not directly. In other words, they are represented by a trusteeship. And this trusteeship allows that other shareholders have one interlocutor, one telephone number, one expert with whom they can interact. And of course, using the intermediary entity, the operating company, this also allows us to benefit from leverage. In other words, from a capital acquisition loan that finances the investment. The other possible key investors as municipalities and investors then together sit on the board of the operating company together with the trustee. And of course, all important and crucial strategic decisions are first voted by the consumers and then voted by the trustee in the operating company. In that way, the operating company invests in a new or the expansion of an existing plant, and this plant then supplies our consumers or our prosumers with electricity as a fixed price within the context of energy communities mostly. However, we also foresee investments in energy efficiency measures in order to reduce self-consumption and increase the revenues from the excess production. This in turn enables a repayment of the loan from the profits over on average 7 to 9 years in our projects. Let me now, in the last part of my presentation, highlight 4 problems of implementation that we have observed. The first one is from our pilot projects in Italy, and it is a problem that is related to the interdependency between renewable energy technology and the business model. On the left-hand side, you see a typical PV or wind project. On the right-hand side, block heating systems with wood, as we have implemented them in the Susa Valley. In the typical PV or wind project, the ownership of the installation is transferred at once it is constructed by an ESCO to an operating company, and so external investors can participate in that operating company as shareholders. In the case of block heating system with biomass projects, very often the ownership remains with the ESCO, which is in this case here the cooperative La Foresta, who owns the assets, and it buys energy from the participating municipality over, on average, a period of 20 years, and only after 20 years the ownership is transferred. And that means that in the portfolio of such an ESCO there are other projects, and if our co-op members or trustee or consumers want to participate only in that very project, it would be difficult to do this directly because they would all have to become members of the La Foresta, which of this ESCO, which wouldn't be the purpose in that case. And this is what makes these type of projects much more complex. We need to set up another entity. So there's not only the ESCO which owns the project, but there has to be another intermediary company which comes with additional costs and complexity that municipalities often shy away from. The second area of problems that we observe is a series of problems which we encountered in our Czech pilot, and they refer to the question of the relation of renewable energy communities to citizen energy communities, and this is the question of governance and control. Without going into any details here, you see that in the city of Prague, our largest pilot, the roof of the project is a so-called contributory organization, which then holds and manages various energy communities across the area of the city. And depending on the ownership structure, these will either qualify as citizen energy communities, or if nobody owns a dominating or a control share, they could even, of course, qualify as renewable energy communities. However, municipalities, and that's our observation, tend to be reluctant to give up control, so they prefer at least a 51% share, and that means that in many cases, actually citizen energy communities may be the more suitable vehicle for such a project. The third area of problems that I want to highlight is related to electricity and energy sharing, and that is that that refers to the actually conditions for such concepts. What you see here is our pilot in Essen, where we have an energy community with electricity sharing between three partners. A third is the city of Essen, a third is the Franz Sales House, and a third is a sports club. But the question is, what will the conditions for electricity sharing be? And in Germany, unfortunately, the legislator has not transposed in time, and we are looking into another half or another year of wait for the transposition. And that means that we don't know what these preferential conditions will be, and this impairs the economic feasibility of such projects. Another related problem is also that in some countries, there was a restriction for electricity sharing on the low voltage grid, which means that, for example, in cities, two sides of a street can find each other, can find themselves on two different branches of the low voltage grid, which would mean that they could not join the same energy community. And the same is true in rural settings, where again, it is very likely that partners of a project might be on different branches of the low voltage grid. In Italy, this has been seen as a problem, although the legislator very quickly transposed and made this mistake, which is remedied now. The good example here is Austria, where the upper limit is the medium voltage grid, and there's only a stepwise reduction of per unit grid charges. But again, we will discuss this in the panels. The last project, and that is my closing slide, is related to inclusion. As Radostina and Patrizia already mentioned, a very important element of SCORE is the inclusion of focus groups, of disadvantaged consumers, of underrepresented groups, be it young people, but also women, for example, and people who are simply poor. And the problem here is that if they become co-owners, they may risk some of the means-tested transfers that they receive. So in other words, to be eligible for social transfers, they first have to not own assets. And if they become co-owners, these the dividends or the value of this ownership might be taken away, might be offset against the social transfers. In other words, there's no whatsoever economic incentive for these groups, and this is something that the legislators across Europe should see, and where mitigation measures or remedies are really urgently needed. An example for this would be to have yearly exemptions for RE investments or in-kind benefits and the like. But again, this will be discussed in the panels. With this quick overview, I would like to close and thank you for your attention. Of course, I'll be here on the 2 days of the conference, and I will comment on the discussions. You will receive the slide set in an extended version with more background reading, and I'm giving the floor back to Radostina. Thank you very much indeed.
Many thanks, Jens, for this very comprehensive overview. And now, as time is advancing, I would like to introduce the next speaker. We're actually now going to have a presentation of our pilots, and the next speaker is Dr. Sara Torabi, who is a postdoctoral researcher in urban sustainability at Politecnico di Torino. She has also done a PhD in urban and regional development and has a track record of 7 years in projects in the field of sustainable cities, national and also European ones. And she has also helped private entities and public administration in achieving sustainable development goals. Today, she will talk about the challenges and also achievements of the Italian pilot, and more particularly focus on biomass district heating in the Susa Valley. So the floor is yours, Sara.
Yeah, thank you so much, Radostina, for your introduction. Actually, I'm going to present our case study in Italy, in Susa Valley, which deals with biomass district heating in Susa Valley. And I'm here on behalf of our research team, many professors, seniors and juniors and students. And here with me, Dr. Toniolo, who is the expert of the energy part. Our case studies are located in the Susa Valley, which is the valley in the metropolitan city of Turin in Piedmont region of the northern part, which is one of the longest valley of the Italian Alps, which extends actually over 50 kilometers in an east-west direction from the French border to the outskirts of the Turin. We have 10 municipalities and pilot case studies, which are spread in the valley, and most of the buildings, as you can see in this picture, are public ones, so the municipalities, and we have many schools. And today I'm going to talk about the specific case study. So one of the municipalities called Ulks, in which we are trying also to connect some of residential building also. I want just to say that notably we are working with the thermal energy consumption and not the electrical one. So the actions that we considered in order to define different retrofitting alternatives were to reduce the energy consumptions by improvement of the envelope systems, to increase the energy efficiency by dealing and improvement in the plant systems, and we dealt also with the comfort increasement, so to control system and replace them. Also, we try to optimize the expenses using the participatory financial model, CSAP model that Professor Jens has explained before. Our methodology was divided in 3 main structures. We started from the technical structure, which was divided in 2 main parts. So the preparation phase, in which we collected the data, and then we moved to the feasibility analysis. So here we have defined different retrofitting alternatives, and we have involved them in the document, which is very complete document. We call it dossier, that I'm going just to show you some slides and examples about them. Then we started with the social structure, because as you know, the social part is one of the very main important of the CSAP model in order to get involved the people. So we start to identify the key persons and analyze the stakeholders, and then to get them involved through different social methods as questionnaires, workshop and focus group, and we are going to look at some of them. And the last phase, it was the legal and financial structure, in which we started to define the financial contracts in order to create the energy communities in Susa Valley. Here you can see that we started to collect the data through different surveys that they were defined by our partners. So in order to collect the information about renewable energy sources investments and identify the buildings, then we started to collect the data about the energy costs and tariffs in order to understand the current status of the building. And then we started to make the document, which we call it dossier, in which we define different alternatives about the retrofitting energy. So we evaluated the energy efficiency of each pilot buildings, and in these documents we defined at least 2 alternatives to 6 alternatives for each municipality buildings. Then we started to identify and select the best scenario among those that we have defined through the multi-criteria analysis. In this case, we have identified 17 KPIs, so 17 indicators, in order to select the best scenario within different aspects. So environmental one, economic one, social one, and technical one. So here you can see that we, for the ULC's case study, actually we defined 6 alternatives. The use of biomass, it was obligatory in all of them as a plants and as an energy system. And then we improved also the envelope system, starting from the insulation on walls and roofs and the windows, and in order to get nearly zero energy building. Here you can see, and this is like just one of our performance metrics. So we have assessed and evaluated all those 17 indicators for all those 6 alternatives for each case study. And then we selected the best one in order to make the business plan for the best scenarios. Then we moved to the social structure. So we started with analyzing the stakeholders. So who are the most relevant and significant actors in our case studies? We've done it actually through different surveys, focus group. We mapped them through the influence and interest matrix, and we made the action plan. And then we have organized 12 events organized in Susa Valley in order to involve and inform the local institutions, so the public and private and citizens. And then we have organized specific workshops for vulnerable citizens, because actually one of the main focus of the project, it was the vulnerable people, so the low income people, the unemployment one, and the single women or single mothers. And then we have also organized different workshops for other citizens, mayors, and also for unrepresented citizens, that there are all students, because we have a lot of schools. So here you can see one of the examples regarding one of the workshops that we have organized for our vulnerable people. So we called them and we asked them about why they're not satisfied with their energy expenditures and typical there in terms of energy consumptions. Then we talked with them about their opinions about the advantages of energy community. And interestingly, they told us that about the low investment that they can put in this energy community, and also about the increasement of the air quality and environmental issues. Then we talked with them about their concerns. Afterward, we organized different workshops specifically with citizens and one with public administration, using storytelling, which is a very soft method to be understood and to be used in order to first share the research activities and inform them. So in order to raise their awareness about the renewable energy sources and how these energy communities work, and more specifically, in particular, in order to co-create and co-design the future scenarios with our inhabitants. Finally, we have also organized different workshops by gaming, by different projects with our students who were frequenting actually these schools at ULC's case study, in order to see how can people be included to participate actively. And through those students, we could actually catch their parents and the people in the territory. By the end, we have organized also the very specific questionnaire within the PhD thesis of one of our students in order to collect different opinions of citizens, to understand the relationship between community and territory, and to collect the buildings, more data about the technical data of buildings, and to collect also the economic, social, and demographic characteristics. We divided to design phase. We then distributed through the different online channels and also in persons. And then we elaborated data, and using the clustering approach, we have clustered the people in all us pilot case studies. So in 3 of them, Susa Valley, Lombardi, and Essen, here you can see the results, and you can see actually in Susa Valley and Essen, the people were mostly very eager to start, and they told us, let's start to make this energy community, and they wanted to get involved. Generally, actually, most of the people were convinced, but sometimes they were a little bit scared about the bureaucracy and innovation part of CSOP model. Here, I think Professor Jens talked enough about the CSOP model, but I was just to say, because we are now at this phase in order to make our contracts, and actually we are talking with the legal experts. We had some challenges in Susa Valley, so regarding the energy community regulation. So because of RED 2 was passed and entered into force only during the project, so in December 2018 and the early December 2019, actually Italian transposition of RED 2 rules for renewable energy communities technologies in its present design unintentionally hinders thermal renewable energy project across the Italy, and not just for us. The situation under the COVID pandemic, it get a little bit hard in order to get involved the people, and also we had some kind of interdependency between renewable energy technologies and business model. I jump just to the last slide in order just to announce our main achievements. I want just to say that we had a lot of and numerous dissemination and coordination and new initiatives during the SCORE project in order to realize the energy community in Susa Valley. Actually, we had this agreement signed by 37 municipalities in Susa Valley, and they won a regional call with, it was not that much, but it was really good, about 10,000 euros. And then the energy community agreement of CHEVS that has success to engage 31 municipalities, around 80,000 inhabitants. And actually they has participated in the national call, so national recovery and resilience plans that they have proposed the project counting for a total investment of 60 million. And we have involved new public administrations, and we proposed new pilots. So I have finished here, and thank you so much for your attention. So we will be here with you for the questions and answers section as well. Thank you so much.
Many thanks, Sara, and already keeping it exactly on time. So we'll proceed with the next presentation, and now we're going to Germany, where we'll have well, some lessons learned also from our German pilot, the municipality of Essen. Mirco Sieg, who is from the Green Capital Agency City of Essen, very much working there on climate protection, sustainable urban development, will already present some results from the pilot project in Essen. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Radostina. Hello to everyone from my side too, and many thanks for the opportunity to present our project, the city of Essen. My name is Mirco Sieg, and I will talk about an energy sharing opportunity between two neighboring properties, the so-called Franz Sales House and the Vocational College East. Jens Lowitzsch already mentioned the Renewable Energy Directive 2 and its implications for renewable energy communities. However, I would like to briefly cover the requirements that we have to meet in our project too. We need, for example, more than 50% local investors among actors among the investors. We need at least three investors, and no one has a share of more than 33%. We need citizen participation that is open to low-income households too, and the focus is not on profit maximization, but on general benefits. As the SCORE project was already introduced today, I just want to briefly say thank you to all our partners that helped us a lot, and especially to Jens Lowitzsch and his team from Viadrina University for their great support. A few words about the political context in the city of Essen and the current situation of our metropolis with nearly 600,000 inhabitants. The political goals in Essen are big. By 2050, we want to have a share of renewables of 33% of the electricity consumption. This has to come mostly from solar PV installations. There are some initiatives that also demand to reach this goal already on 2030. At the moment, we have a PV share of our electricity of just around 1%. So there's a lot of work to do, and to achieve those goals, we need innovative concepts to achieve the urban energy transition. To our project, as you see highlighted in blue, you see the Franz Sales House, which is a Catholic facility for disabled people. Around 1,500 employees work for this Franz Sales House, and on 40 locations in Essen. And on the central campus, which you see here, there are 15 different buildings for living, training, working, sports, and more. On the Vocational College East, highlighted in green, it's a day and evening school of the city of Essen with approximately 3,000 students and 63 classrooms, and it has large roof areas suitable for PV. At first, I want to talk about the opportunities we see in energy sharing between those two properties, because there's a very good complementarity between those properties. The Franzales house, for example, has a very high power consumption of approximately 1.8 million kilowatt hours a year and a pretty high base load, even on weekends and during holidays. Therefore, it has a very high potential to direct self-consumption of solar power. The vocational college East, on the other hand, has just a power consumption of only 500,000 kilowatt hours a year and a very low base load and on weekends and holidays. So together, the two property can potentially reach a very high self-consumption rate. To talk about the financing, our plan is to have 4 investors or let's say shareholders in this renewable energy community. 33% is the association of the Franzales house. Another third is the sports club, which is located on the same property. And then we have a special solution that 30% of the shares is held by the city of Essen, and 3.3% goes to a citizens cooperative with a students project. We are lucky that we probably can finance the whole investment by equity capital. And in our first feasibility study, we came to the result that a payback period of approximately 10 years is theoretically possible. Another opportunity is the joint financing by municipality, local companies, and citizens that could accelerate the urban energy transition. We also thought about a just distribution of the profits between the shareholders for the city. For the first pilot in Essen, the model is mainly based on the idea that shareholders sell the self-produced electricity to themselves through an operating company. The production yield is about 640,000 kilowatt hours a year, so we could reach a joint self-consumption rate of around 93%. The cash flow arises primarily from avoided expenses. However, there will be an additional formation of a monetary reserve for dividends for the shareholders, including the cooperative, for leveraging non-cash benefits and for further development of the renewable energy community and its operating company. Just a short overview about the possible revenue paths. All shareholders that are directly connected to the local campus grid can profit from lower electricity prices. Then there will be a certain amount of dividends that can be split up between all shareholders and can especially go to the shareholders of the citizens cooperative. And last but not least, there will be probably also a non-cash benefits that are useful for the participating citizens and students. For example, for improving the school building, educational trips, or financing working groups with sustainability topics.
Mirco, could you come to your concluding remarks?
Already, okay. Then I will skip some. Just in general, we had 2 possibilities or 2 ideas of sharing the electricity, one by a private medium voltage cable and the other via using the public grid. And when we use private cable and build our own microgrid, we don't have to pay a few levies and charges that we would have to pay using the public grid. Here highlighted in blue. And so we had, as we calculated, we have to share around 35,000 kilowatt hours a year, and this about for 20 years. So the question was, do we pay the construction works and transformers for the physical sharing, or do we pay the grid charges and levies for using the public grid, or do we get for a forget about energy sharing, or do we find other solutions? As I can already say, the unpleasant result was that the private medium voltage cable was much too expensive, and we would have significant losses per kilowatt hour shared. And so the other opportunity or idea is more interesting now. So sharing via public grid. Calculations are at this moment for this plant layout, that's about minus 0.5% and plus 0.15%. So we have no significant losses or profits for this chosen plant layout, but we are still looking for another solution. Option 3, other solutions would be calculate other economics for other plant layouts, or perhaps we could file for a regulatory sandbox, or we could wait and prepare for changes in laws and guidelines. Pros would be this could make energy sharing possible as demanded by the European Union. The cons would be potentially long waiting time. Some of those challenges Jens already mentioned. Yeah, the next step for us would be to conceive that the city council says yes to the project, but it needs significant profitability for a positive decision. The legal framework I already mentioned is at the moment not so far that we can use it directly, or that allows profitable plant layouts or solutions, but we are still looking for solutions there. And yeah, the opportunities for the city of Essen we see is that we have new impulses for accelerated PV installation, on innovation, technically, legally, regulatorily, and we want to use cooperation between local actors, and we see all this project as a learning field for scale, and the goal is to scale this concept for further combinations in urban areas and for other projects in Essen. It's a new territory even for experts, and so we already learned a lot. Thank you very much for your attention, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Kluszak will present the final pilot. He has been the head of the energy management at the city of Prague. He's the head of the energy management of city of Prague, and he has a PhD in environmental economy. Miloslav, Franek, so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Radostina. Thank you very much for the possibility to be here. My name is Miloslav Franek. I'm from Prague, from the city of Prague, and I'm glad to have a possibility to share with you the information how Prague is going to take the part in the CO2 fight to help the climate, even in conditions of the Czech Republic. The decision is based on Prague climate plan, which is to reduce by 45% the CO2 emissions by 2030. And as a following city to this core project, we have started communicating with this beautiful team in the beginning of this year in January. And based on that, we have established an entirely new dedicated team to start preparing further steps to follow our climate plan. We have done several quite important steps already within this year, which basically was a review of energy management and the system of energy savings approach on the Prague city level. And straight in the beginning, we have decided to prepare first pilots to learn how to assess the way to installation of renewable energy sources. the first small pilot was prepared for 2 residential buildings in Prague. At the moment, we are already in the situation where we have the application confirmed to be able to connect the photovoltaics on 2 rooftops, and we are in the process to select the supplier of the technology. In the meantime, we have we did a lot of analysis, and we have selected several buildings. At the moment, there is a list of Prague-owned buildings to install photovoltaics, and we have about 38 buildings in assessment for the EPC project to run the energy savings in other part of ownership of the buildings in Prague city. The second pilot, which is now prepared, and we have already prepared the application for support from modification fund from the Czech Ministry of Industry. We are going to install photovoltaics on 22 Prague-owned buildings, mainly schools and social houses, but can't forget, for example, the botanical garden in Prague and the zoo as well. And furthermore, there is a plan where we would like to fill in the database for the next photovoltaics installations, which supposed to be 50 buildings who are in the cooperative ownership of Prague citizens, and 50 buildings or block of flats available from the third parts, basically private sector. For all that activities, as Jens Lowitzsch has already mentioned today, we have created a very separate and very new contributory company, which was set up by the 1st of October this year, and it's called Prague Renewable Energy Community. And basically that's supposed to be what I'm calling a mother of communities to support that beautiful activity to help the Prague city to get rid of the CO2 emissions, have own sources of electricity, and save the cost of the electricity within the year round. At the moment, we have just placed for the 22 buildings, we have placed the applications for licenses, and we have placed the applications for donations from the modernization fund to get part of financing to help these projects happen. I'd like to share a couple of details about the Prague Renewable Energy Community, which is the name of our newly built company for that. Basically, the decision why to get this direction on establish entirely independent company was to have own organization and professional personnel with experience backgrounds to be able to prepare the projects, run all the installation, and the plan is within the ongoing years till 2030 to install about 20,000 of photovoltaics on the area of Prague, which is a pretty challenging plan. And thanks to the SCORE project, we believe we have a lot of experience gaining from these teams, and we believe we have started very well, and we are looking forward to get to first experience in Prague as well. We would like to get the generation equipment and supply of energy to our citizens more efficiently, getting it from the place they live. We would like to get the energy for our own offices and our own buildings and appliances. And we would like to get further with discussions with grid providers and other players on the market to agree on reasonable conditions for using the overflows and possibility to share it in between of the communities, or just simply transfer it to the next building to another part of inhabitants. We are ready to open it to communal possibilities and get growth of the number of cooperative communities as well. For that, we plan to establish the one-stop shop as well in Prague under the Prague Renewable Energy Company to help the others as well with the process of either apply for different funds or getting enough of experience and enough of technical support. There are several models. I believe there is no need to mention in details. Basically, we can start from installing photovoltaic or another source of renewable energy in the open air, up to moving to very sophisticated system where sharing of the energy would be simple, and we will follow examples which you've heard about from different parts of Europe. The main activities we are prepared to follow in our new company is to prepare all the things for new plants. The main plan is to go further with photovoltaics installations, but we would like to run the analysis for energy sharing as well and help with the installation of other resources, mainly on the heating plants, to get independent on the major suppliers. And we would like to operate the plants for the companies who will be interested and for the communities who will join our effort. We would like to have the central energy purchasing organization within our team, and we would like to push further the investors to be able to supply the energy on long-term agreement from renewable energy sources. And we would like to support the energy saving projects as well, as mentioned on the EPC contracts or renewable energy sources. We have a vast support to basically any type of modernization or energy saving project in the Czech Republic. There is a new project for apartment buildings, which is called New Green for Saving, which you can get up to 50% of the investment done to renewable energy. Even the family houses or private houses can get up to 60% of subsidiary, plus further support for each kilowatt peak installed. The public buildings can get support up to 30%, and so on. And we have already joined the project for the ELENA support from European Investment Bank, which will help us very much to cover the cost of the preparation work and designing of the new systems. And furthermore, we would like to discuss with European banks to get another support to private sector. Just finished is the preparation of the Prague Renewable Energy Cooperative on the website. So by the 1st of December, people would be able to join and get all the information and get support from our team to join and get further with their projects. Basically, we believe, as it was already mentioned today as well, the EU directive is motivating the local sectors to get their renewable energy communities into local legislation, which we believe and hope as well will be done reasonably enough to get as much as possible to support communities in energy in the Czech Republic. Yeah, and as I would like to finish a very positive way, this person is sending his regards as it's 17th of November, which is very important day. My colleagues have bank holidays today. So all regards from the Czech Republic, and thanks for the possibility to be here and become part of European effort for better climate. Thank you very much. Look forward to get any questions if you are interested in more details. Thank you.
Many thanks also Miloslav for joining us today and sharing the story of the city of Prague, and we ended in a positive note. I would like to give now the floor to Lena from the European University of Frankfurt, Viadrina, who will now lead the answers and questions and answers session.
Thank you so much, Radostina, and also to the speakers for giving us an overview. I followed the chat to see if questions came in that we can discuss together. I'm happy to pose a question to Mirco for Essen. I will simply read it out. You mentioned that shareholders sell electricity to themselves with a reduced electricity price, but since there is no reduction in taxes or fees when sharing energy, where does the price discount come from?
Well, that's a very good question. Thing is, we hope that the levelized cost of energy of our plants plus the grid charges and levies are lower than the grey electricity the shareholders buy from their utility. And our calculations show that we are very close to achieve this goal. Of course, in our research project, it's an advantage that the shareholders agree not to need 7 to 10% of revenues, but a small but safe plus of 1 or 2% would be enough. And of course, in general, you raised the right question here. And to easily make energy sharing possible via the public grid, we still need some good ideas and probably also some changes in legislation too.
Maybe also a quick comment from the legal side. The biggest problem in Germany is that at the moment, with regard to self-consumption, when using an intermediary entity, the entity is considered different and distinct from its shareholders. So in our case, we have 3 shareholders, institutional shareholders, plus the students cooperative or the energy cooperative, with the members mostly being students. But for the students, of course, there is no self-consumption because they don't consume, but it's the school. But for the other 3 partners, the BKO, the Vocational College East, and the Franz Sales House and the Sports Club, they are the only ones who will actually consume the produced energy. Nevertheless, they are not considered self-consumers because of the intermediary entity, which is actually the energy community. And that is a paradox which has been an obstacle for a long time in Germany. And of course, the European legislator has clearly said that this has to be done away with. And that's why we are so impatiently waiting for the finally for the transposition of the RED II in Germany. And sorry, and why is this important? Sorry, I forgot. Because if it is self-consumption, then the surcharge, the renewable energy surcharge, either only applies at a 40% rate, that is 60% reduction, or it can even be completely exempt. But that is all to see in the future.
Thank you very much for the comments. So far, I saw no other questions coming in. If no other question comes up spontaneously, I will encourage questions for the future panels.
I'd like to introduce now to the panel Marie Kleeschulte from the Climate Alliance, who are our partner. They're an umbrella association focusing on climate protection and sustainable development. Marie is a project manager and she has been engaged in our project and also in particularly in the Sustainable Energy Investment Forum's initiative on energy efficiency financing. And she will provide now an overview of the key achievement and challenges of the follower cities.
Thank you, Radostina, for the kind introduction and also for the introduction of Climate Alliance, that is a city network. So yeah, the follower cities, we have heard already quite a bit about them today, but if you don't know what the follower cities of SCORE are, let me introduce them to you a little bit. So the SCORE follower cities are the cities that are also on their way to implement the CSOP, the consumer stock ownership plan, such as the pilots as well, or other types of energy community models locally. They have been recruited in the second part of the project mostly, and to learn from experiences in the pilots and to replicate the CSOP model. And to do that, they have received support from the SCORE partners in terms of legal and economic expertise and expertise on consumer involvement. But of course, these are municipalities and cities that are themselves very interested and very active on the topic of energy communities and consumer involvement in energy projects. So they have also contributed with their own learnings and their own results to our project. And we are very proud that we have now gathered around 30 municipalities from 12 EU countries, and we call them our follower cities, and we're very happy that we've been engaging with them in the last years. On the map, you can see that we have mostly been in touch with cities from the countries in light blue. So this is where we are most active and most of our follower cities come from, but we have also been in touch with cities and municipalities or regional authorities from the countries in dark blue. And we're hoping to make them official finally follower cities also until the end of the project. And we're quite positive and hopeful that we'll be able to achieve that. Let me quickly introduce to you some of the names. These are the names of some of our most active follower cities. You'll hear from many of them also today not directly after my input, but a little bit afterwards on the agenda. We'll hear directly from some of the follower cities representatives, and they will tell us a little bit about their experiences with energy sharing, citizen participation, and renewable energy community setup. You'll see here from the names that we have gathered in this cohort very different municipalities. So we have very small rural communities and municipalities, but also it goes up to provinces, islands, whole islands that are interested and involved in the SCORE project. And this has led to very different experiences and very different learnings also from all of these follower cities. One interesting note may be that we have quite a few and a lot of active follower cities from Italy, and especially from the Piedmont region where the SCORE consortium is gathered today. This is of course due to the fact that one of our pilots, Susa, is located in Italy, but also due to the fact that the regional law of Piedmont region is very advanced when it comes to the transposition of the Renewable Energy Directive 2. And this leads me directly to the challenges and obstacles that we have observed within the group of the follower cities. This is a little bit of a repetition of what, of course, we have experienced also in the pilots, because this has, of course, to do, first of all, with regulatory challenges that are in place still. And this is largely due to the fact that RED 2 has been transposed now in June this year. And of course, there are new legal definitions that need to be understood and implemented and understood in practice. So there's some kind of uncertainty about that. And also, of course, about the partly incomplete or faulty transposition of RED II, what we have also just discussed for the example of Germany, where some uncertainty is still in place, and a complete transposition would, of course, make energy sharing, etc., much easier. Then secondly, some obstacles were observed in the cities regarding building of the business case. So, of course, to build a CSOP, the selection of the business model is quite an important, or the implementation of the elements of the business model is quite important. So here the city needs to decide between innovative business models like the CSOP, or more traditional ones like cooperatives or limited other liability companies. So this is really where the business model comes in place, and where we have tried to support the municipalities in choosing the right fit, the local fit for each city. Secondly, and this has also been partly mentioned by some of the partners before, due to the new regulations and articles of the Renewable Energy Directive, municipalities and citizens are now again encouraged to really act also as co-investors on a more frequent basis. And this is something that is for many of our municipalities new. Of course, they have, of course, interacted with their citizens, of course, in many occasions, but really to be on the same level as co-investors is still an obstacle and a challenge from our experience, because before, mostly joint energy projects looked maybe like the renting of the municipal roof to a citizen cooperative, and not the joint co-investing. That is a little bit more of a new, let's say, model that but that has been embraced quite well, but it has also brought, of course, new paths and challenges. And thirdly, but this really just shortly, the consumer involvement is not always easy if you want to do it right. And of course, especially if low-income households are involved, there is this dilemma of losing eligibility for social welfare benefits from the private consumer side. And this is something that plays also, again, a role in regulatory challenges, as it's a social policy dilemma, which we will hear from later from our partner CARITAS Germany as well. And Kirsten will go into more detail on this later. Secondly, what has been quite obvious is that consumer involvement is not just is a buzzword, but it needs to be done right if you want to really do it successfully. So to find the right intermediaries and local partners is crucial to involve consumers, and to really be successful in involving them. And to make this successful, it's needed to cooperate with trusted and established partners in the field. But I don't want to end on, sorry, I think there's someone with an unmuted microphone, thank you. So of course, despite all these challenges and obstacles, why did we gather more than 30 other municipalities and even more interested ones to learn about the CSOP and renewable energy communities with us? So of course, it's a very hot topic at the moment for many municipalities and cities. It's a way to contribute to climate neutrality and other of their strategic policy goals, such as energy efficiency and emission reduction, etc. So many see this as a really a promising field and want to be engaged in these projects. CSOPs and renewable energy communities build social cohesion and contribute to a building sense of community, and also capacity building, not only on the municipal and local side, but also among citizens and other involved actors that receive more information, technical, energetic, and also social capacity to increase their knowledge in such energy projects. For many local authorities or regional authorities, the positive benefit of combating energy poverty is also something that is quite interesting for them and is on the political agenda in many countries at the moment, and is also a distinguished part and a special part of the SCORE project that is really also looking at how we can contribute to fighting energy poverty by involving vulnerable households that are typically not investing in energy installations. And how has the SCORE project supported these cities? Well, mainly we have started to work with several of our follower cities on local feasibility studies, and we have started with them to set up their energy consumption profiles of the households and building involved, to really get all this key information and important information to be able to build the business case and to get first of idea of size of installation, etc. We have organized and co-organized workshops with municipalities and their citizens to increase this communication between these actors and to find a common ground for all co-investors involved, and to find common words also for these projects that can sometimes be quite new for all these actors. And of course, we have provided wherever possible legal and economic support for the different cities, for the different countries, and we will also continue to do so in any way possible. So I think while there are still some challenges, of course, to be met, and we will hear about them in the course of the 2 days ahead, there are also quite a few interesting achievements and interesting cities on board. And we're going to hear from them in a second. And I just want to say thank you for listening to this short introduction to our follower cities. And I think it's really crucial that we're here and that we're supporting municipalities and driving this democratic form of an energy transition forward. And yeah, with that, I want to thank you and give the word back to Radostina, and I'll be happy to answer any questions later. Thank you.
Many thanks, Marie, for this interesting panoramic overview of the follower city achievements and challenges. To Ibrahim Abada, who is an associate professor at Grenoble École du Management. He will talk about the electricity sharing and how we move from electricity sharing to value sharing in the renewable energy communities. And he's also an author of an asset study, basically this asset study on energy communities in the European Union. And he developed this value sharing concept for energy sharing. So Ibrahim, the floor is yours now. And after Ibrahim, then we'll go back to Micheal and hopefully.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Very good. Sorry for this. So thank you for the invitation. My name is Ibrahim Abada, and I'm an associate professor at Grenoble École de Management in France. So what I wanted to present to you today are the main insights we have obtained after the asset study that we did for the European Commission, and that led to a certain number of scientific publications. At the time, we were interested in finding some levers to foster the development of local energy communities in Europe. And quite rapidly, after some discussions, we have understood that there could be some obstacles to this fostering related to this notion of stability of local energy communities, linked to the idea that the value that could be created by these local energy communities should be shared in a nice and efficient way to incentivize all the members of the local energy communities to stay within the coalition. So we're going to talk today about this notion of value sharing, not value creation, but value sharing or value allocation between all the members of the energy community. So today there is strong evidence that there is a lot of value that could be created by these local energy communities. So they can be quantified or not. So you can list, for instance, a decrease of emissions motivated by environmental concerns. There could also be some financial gains that could materialize in the form of reduced electricity bills, for instance. There is the willingness to become energetically independent, to gather into a community, etc. So there is definitely some value that can be created by these local energy communities. Now, when you consider the values that have some economic interpretation, so that could be measured, like reduced electricity bills, for instance, or reduced fixed costs, if you have, for instance, economies of scale in the investment cost for a storage device or a PV panel or anything, then there is also a financial incentive and financial value created by that. There are some aggregation benefits. If you look at the electricity bill for a set of participants in an energy community, the fact that they are going to mitigate their consumption profiles can lead to some reductions for the peak component of the electricity bill, for instance, that could also materialize into an economic value that is created. There's also some electricity that could be injected in the grid, for instance, and that could be compensated at the feed-in tariff, etc. So overall, there is some value. And what is good is that the more diversified the people or the members of the local energy communities, the higher this value is going to be. So the heterogeneity of the members is going definitely to increase the value that can be created, and hence the incentive to participate in the project of a local energy community. So for instance, if you're going to have various consumption or production profiles, like if you're going to mix pure prosumers or with producers and people or members consuming at different hours of the day, then obviously you're going to increase the potential of the use of storage devices, for instance, and you're going to maximize the potential of PV production and local consumption they're going to have. If you look at the electricity bills, for instance, there is also a higher aggregation benefit, which is also going to justify the increasing value created by this community because of the heterogeneity of the members. Now, the bad news that could come with this is that if you have heterogeneous consumption profiles of heterogeneous people or members belonging to this energy community, then if you have created some value, then you have to think carefully on how you're going to share or how you're going to allocate this value among the members of the community that have contributed to the creation of this value. So here it's an issue that could come in top of the standard or the issue that we are familiar with related to the physical sharing of electricity between the members of the local energy community and the electrical power flows, etc. Here we are really going a little bit further and trying to see whether that could be an issue, and actually there is an issue, as you will see later on, that could generate from the fact that you're not going to share this value in a nice way and a fair way between the members of the energy community. And if you want to find, as I said, an efficient or a nice way or a fair way to allocate this value among the members, then you have to understand what is the incentive of all the members to belong to the energy community. And you have also to give them an amount of the value that could incentivize them to stay within the energy community. And you are also going, for instance, to incentivize all the different sub-members of sub-coalitions or subgroups that could form among these energy communities, so that in a fair way, all these sub-coalitions are going to be happy by staying within the ground coalition that is defining the local energy community. So if you take a simple example of only consumers, we're not going to consider prosumers here, for instance. If you have one member or one household or one family that is consuming electricity around noon, in a way that is correlated with the PV production profile in the area of the local energy community, then it is actually making the most of the local auto consumption. And in principle, it is generating more value as compared to other members who are going to consume around 8 p.m. at the peak hours, for instance, where you're going to withdraw electricity from the grid instead of consuming it. So it is logical ceteris paribus, so if all the things are the same, it is logical to give a higher value to the people that are generating, so the example of people consuming around noon, that are generating more value to the energy community as compared to the other values, or to the other members of the energy community. So there is definitely this issue value sharing that is linked to a kind of fairness, actually, because you have to treat in a fair way all the members of the local energy community. Now, the good news is that this problem is quite known in economic theory, and it can be dealt with using cooperative games. And actually, the idea is that there are some techniques to share this value, to allocate this value in a way that is going to fulfill what I said before. That is going to incentivize all the members, all the individuals, but also all the sub-coalitions to remain within the grand coalition. In the context of the asset study and in our research, we have simulated, so on an experiment, but it wasn't on the field, on reality. So we have simulated a certain number of local energy communities, and we've tried to look for these nice allocation rules. So we tried at the beginning simple allocation rules that could be quite natural for local energy communities. So for instance, we tried the equal allocation. You generate a value and then you're going to share it equally among all the members of the local energy community. We tried the pro rata allocation, either of consumption or of capacity. And what we have witnessed is that for standard local energy community, if you have a little heterogeneity among the consumption profiles of the people belonging to these local energy communities, then you're going to fail to stabilize the local energy community. These simple allocation rules are not enough, are not fair, are not going to incentivize all the members to stand within the grand coalition. But the good news is that some solutions exist. What is not good is that they're more complicated to implement, maybe more complicated to explain to members of the local energy community. If you're familiar with these notions, there's the Shapley value, for instance, that could be used. You have other nice allocation rules that are going to minimize the inequality of treatment among the people. But the bottom line is that some solutions exist, and there is a trade-off to be found between the fairness, as I said, because you want to incentivize, you want to be fair and incentivize all the people to stay, but also the simplicity of implementation. If you have something too complicated, then people aren't going to accept it because it's simply not going to understand that. Right, so we have to arbitrage between the efficiency, fairness, and the simplicity of the implementation. But as I said, there are some solutions. We have tested them, at least numerically, and they seem to work quite fine. Now they remain to be tested on the field here with real cases and real local energy communities. Well, thank you for your attention. Now I'm done with my talk and have questions.
Many thanks, Ibrahim, for sharing these examples. And now let's try again with Micheal. Do we hear him?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, perfectly. So it works finally. Yeah, great.
I'm sorry for the inconvenience.
Yeah, no worries. So right now we can already start with the major also lessons learned from your project on advancing energy communities.
So thank you very much, Radostina, and sorry for the inconveniences I did here. I cannot understand why, but anyway, yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Radostina, but thanks also to the organizers, particularly to Jens Lowitzsch for inviting us to prepare the CAMRES project, one of the many sister projects of the SCORE project. And yeah, I have the pleasure to present you in a nutshell the key activities in our project regarding energy communities. So what is CAMRES about? The acronym is quite general: community energy for the uptake of renewables in the electricity sector, connecting long-term visions with short-term actions. The purpose of the project is mainly twofold. We aim to increase with CAMRES the share of renewable energy in the electricity sector. This is a general objective, but we try to facilitate the development of renewable energy communities, but also try to support the implementation of enabling frameworks for renewable energy communities. Some facts and figures about the CAMRES project. It's also a Horizon 2020 project. We started in September 2020, and the project will last until end of February 23. Our technological focus is on PV, wind onshore, storage solutions, and integrated solutions. And we involve 16 partners in our consortium from 9 countries. And the partners range from pioneering countries to countries where community energy is still in an embryonic state. And here you can see the different partners in our consortium. I don't want to describe all of them, but perhaps highlighting that we have 2 energy agencies, 2 national energy agencies on board, Enea from Italy and the Polish energy agency, CAPI. And also from Norway, we have the regulatory body, the Norwegian Water Resources and Energy Directorate, and also RESCOOP, the umbrella organization of energy cooperatives in Europe. So in all of our partner countries, we identified both target regions where community energy so far is developed to a lesser extent, and model regions where community energy is far more advanced, or regions which are even pioneers regarding community energy in Europe. And here you can see the different regions in all of our countries. Also here, I don't want to read all of this information. In Germany, we have Thuringia as a target region, and Schleswig-Holstein in the very north of Germany as the model region, and the same scheme applies for all the other countries. Even in Latvia and Norway, the whole country serves as the target region, because there are still very few examples only, and yeah, community energy is an exercise for the whole country, which is relevant for the whole country indeed. So what are the key activities in the CAMRES project? We started with an analysis of the framework conditions in the different target regions, and this was also combined with a short legal gap assessment where we analyzed the transposition of the RED II in the different countries. Furthermore, we continued with an analysis of the potentials for renewable energy communities in the different target regions. Presently, we are working on 3 different activities. In most of our regions, we are analyzing barriers and drivers for RECs. We are also working on financing instruments and business models. And in my presentation, I will present now a few examples of good practice projects. And this is the 3rd activity which we are currently working on. And the next step, mainly next year, will be we try to initiate transfers of good practices and also accompany these transfers with capacity development workshops. And as a horizontal activity, we have so-called stakeholder dialogues. In all countries, we established so-called country desks, where we have regular meetings with different stakeholders from in the field of community energy. We have thematic workshops, we have policy roundtables where we invite policymakers, politicians, and we have dedicated stakeholder consultations. And this is a horizontal activity lasting for the whole project. Regarding good practice of renewable energy communities, here you can see the good practice criteria which we developed in the project. Innovativeness, not only on the national level, but also on the European level. Compliance with the RED II, in particular Articles 2 and 22, and particularly the different elements which are set down there: proximity and local control, and some other elements which are important here regarding the definition of renewable energy communities. Then inclusiveness, to what extent are low-income households and vulnerable households included in community energy initiatives. Economic, social, and environmental benefits, the model character of energy community, and the transferability. And on the right side, you can see the different steps. Basically, we have 2 steps. At first, we try to identify good practices. We have developed now 20 draft good practice cases. And later on, we will select 5 to 10 best practices out of those good practices. And a key indicator or a key criterion how to define the best practices is transferability. Here you can see now an overview of the CAMRES good practice cases or the draft good practices which have been currently under development. From each of our partner countries, we received mostly 2 or 3 cases. Again, here, I don't want to describe all these cases. We don't have the time for that. Some general remarks. It's interesting that many of these cases are pilot projects, and pilot projects which have been initiated or supported by European projects, like from the Horizon program, but also Interreg program. That is an interesting finding. Another interesting point is here are similarities to the SCORE project, because 2 of the cases we developed in the CAMRES, Magliano Alpi, and also in Poland, the bioenergy cluster in Słupsk. As I understood, these are follower cities or follower communities in the SCORE project. So here again is some interlinkage between our 2 projects. And yeah, if we talk about energy sharing and collective self-consumption, I think the most important or the most interesting cases are from Italy, where we have different renewable energy communities, but also Portugal, Spain. They have also or are developing some kind of energy sharing, collective energy consumption activities. Also, the Dutch cases are quite interesting. In the community of Lonen, they are developing a community virtual power plant, which means there's a centralized energy management system, and they do not only produce electricity, but they try to balance demand and supply and deliver and provide and sell flexibility services to the electricity market. And this is also quite interesting. Also, the energy gardens concept from the Netherlands is also quite interesting. There, the approach is to integrate or to develop energy gardens which integrate biodiversity protection with energy production and recreation facilities. So also there are 3 pilot projects currently supported in the Netherlands under this interesting concept. So this is the last slide I will show you. It's one of the 3 good practice cases from Germany. It's a pool of 5 community wind farms, the so-called Grenzland pool or borderland pool, because it's located close to the Danish border. And these 5 community wind farms are operated by independent companies, which are fully owned by local residents and citizens. They are organized as limited liability partnerships, in German GmbH in Krug AG. And they share the management. The managers of these 5 plants are mostly the same ones, and they are also partly at least the initiators of all these 5 community wind farms. In total, there are 1,000 local residents involved as limited partners from 6 villages, and which means that this is almost 25% of the local population, which are limited partners in these wind energy plants. The autonomy principle, which is set down in the red 2, is also implemented here. Maximum 5% of the shares may be owned by one shareholder, and the managers of the wind farms own jointly maximum 3% of the shares. All the other shares are owned by citizens and perhaps also some small local companies. The economic benefits include disbursements, or let's say dividends, to the shareholders, land lease payments to the landowners. Then in Germany, these companies have to pay local business tax to the municipality. Also a characteristic here in these 5 community wind farms is that local businesses and local banks are involved as financing institutions. There's also benefit sharing mechanisms like donations, like the establishment of non-profit foundations, which receive a certain share of the revenues and distribute these revenues again for social purposes, for charity purposes, and yeah, for local community purposes. Also in infrastructure development, and also including in-kind benefits. 2 examples of these 5 community wind farms: the community wind farm in Elhöft. This is not only one of the first community wind farms established in Germany in general, but it's also the first community wind farm which concluded a power purchase agreement in 2018 after the expiration of the feed-in tariff, which is paid or has been paid for 20 years. After this period, they looked for alternative marketing options, and they concluded the first power purchase agreement with Greenpeace Energy. And they are also a pioneer in cross-sector use of electricity or sector coupling. They have launched projects regarding use of electricity for hydrogen production, both off-site and on-site. Another community wind farm, which is part of this pool, is Grenzstrom Windwett. Also here we have quite innovative elements. It's the first cross-border community wind farm in Germany, because also citizens from Denmark are involved as shareholders. And it's also the first community wind farm which published a common good balance sheet, or so-called in German Gemeinwohlbilanz. It's a kind of sustainability reporting scheme, or it's a voluntary sustainability reporting scheme. And currently planned are, should be added ground-mounted community PV installations. There is already one. There are plans to add another one without financial support from the renewable energy sources. And another project with this plan is an energy park Westre, which means that more electrolyzers should be built, and the purpose is to expand the hydrogen value creation supply chain.
Micheal,
Yes.
could you try
Yes.
to wrap up?
I'm finishing. Yeah. Here you can see the website of the CAMRES project, CAMRES EU. And yeah, thank you very much for your attention.
Many thanks, Micheal. That was quite an interesting and useful overview of the different best practice initiatives, and also geographically in different regions. Now I would like to give the floor to Agnieszka Filipiak from the European University of Frankfurt-Vedrina, who will now lead the discussion with the questions on the follower cities.
Good afternoon, all of you. I'm happy to be here with you. And now we can fluently move on to the perspective and point of view of the follower cities that we would like to present by asking them three key questions that had to be answered during this road of establishing follower cities. And now I would like to share with you those questions. So I hope you can see them all now. Yes? Okay, perfect. Can you hear me as well?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Perfect. Okay, then let's move quickly, because we have 4 people who would like to present their follower projects. Firstly, I will just quickly say who will be the people who will be presenting. That will be Dominique Duden, who will show us the project and answer the questions regarding follower city in Netherlands. Then secondly, I would like to ask Yaes de Silva, who will present the project in Spain. Then we will move to Sergio Oliviero, who will introduce the project in Italy. And last not least, Piotr Lidzbarski, presenting the Słupsk city follower Okay.
We have 4 follower cities. Then one is from Spain. That is actually Vega de Valcarce, and that is Jayesh, who is just reconnecting now with his audio settings. Then we have a follower city, which is one of the, if not the, if I recall correctly, the first energy community that practiced energy and electricity sharing in Italy. That is from Magliano Alpi, and Sergio Olivero will present there. And then we do have the project in Słupsk in Poland, which will be briefly presented by Piotr Libarski. And the last one is, as Agnieszka just mentioned, from Portugal, and that is Cascais, and it is our I'm not sure who from Cascais will present. Yeah, Gonzalo, sorry. So giving the floor back to Agnieszka and to Jayesh then.
Jayesh, can you confirm that we can hear you properly now?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Great.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, let's go straight to the questions.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. And it's been a great journey working with the SCORE team. And it's lovely to be on this call. And thanks for all the interesting speeches before. So we are representing Vega de Valcarce, which is a renewable energy community that we are developing in the northwest of Spain. And in this beautiful location, and it's a community of about 200 people, and there are 28 villages, but out of that, it's really the main village that we are focusing on with the 200 people living in there. And the project is envisaged at 40 kilowatts to 100 kilowatts. 100 kilowatts is the limit for an individual system under the regulations in Spain. And we are partnered with several organizations, including SCORE and Renaissance, the Free University of Brussels, and also UNED, which is the equivalent of the Open University of Spain. And we are closely working with the municipality of Vega de Valcarce. Why are we right? And so we've done a fair bit of work since we started off in 2018, and at this stage we've identified that we would be looking to do a system on the school roof and provide a community with energy during daytime within this community that I put a picture of. It's all of these people are within a 500-meter radius, which is important under the regulation. And the idea is to have, as previous presenters made, a diversified or heterogeneous group of people to be in the renewable energy community. But to start it off, due to the complications of having a heterogeneous group, we are looking at having the municipality on board, and the school building rooftop, and also the school to consume that energy, which is also part of the municipality, and perhaps a larger consumer such as the nursing home, which is close by, to kick off the project. The energy modeling that we've done suggests that unlike perhaps in other parts of Europe, the project from a financial point of view can be quite viable, is quite attractive. We think with a diversified group of consumers, we can increase the self-consumption, and through the increase of self-consumption, we could reduce the variable cost of electricity in that area by 30 to 40% with the current regulation in place, and still provide for the investors in the renewable energy community a return of about 10%. And So that's where we are at the moment, and we're trying to set up a legal entity, which we have been with Professor Jens. We've been looking at the different models, and because time is short, I'm just going to cover the model that we're thinking of at the moment. It's you got the associations and Sociedad Responsabilidad Limitada, which is a limited liability model, and we also looked at the cooperative model, and we looked at the consumer stock ownership plan model. But given the size of the initial phase, we're looking at a 40 kilowatt system. The transaction cost can't be very high, and therefore we think that we need to look at a legal framework that is more a limited liability type of partnership organization.
Okay. Yes, if I may interrupt you, because we will have to stretch another to project description
Sure.
in a second. So maybe just
I think we're done. So this is where we are at from a legal framework. And stop sharing my screen. Don't know why. How do I do that? Yeah. Let's see here. So in terms of the challenges we faced at this development stage, the challenges have been to do with data gathering. We've been working with the Free University of Brussels to do the energy modeling to see how best to optimize the system, and gathering data is a difficulty, because although the regulation is in place and there is under the renewable energy directives, people are supposed to have the right to access their data. In practice, there is no real body, an independent body that we can go to. We have to go to the distribution system operator, who's not that interested in working with the community. So that's been a challenge. And also setting up the business model, legal framework, the legal entity for these sort of renewable energy communities is quite challenging. But in terms of funding arrangements, that's not really considered. So right now in Spain, there is some funding available for the hardware, the equipment, but there isn't really a focus on the legal entity setting up. And so these are some of the challenges we're facing.
Thank you. I think that will be very good material for setting the questions afterwards if we will have a moment. Sure. Thank you very much, Jayesh. Now I would like to move to the next presentation of Sergio Oliviero, that if you could please kindly share with us what were your answers to the 3 key questions as a follower city. So what were the opportunities, difficulties, obstacles, and if your project had a financial support or not?
Well, can I make a quick description of the project?
Of course, of course.
Okay. Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so I will talk about Mariano Alpi. That Mariano Alpi, well, is growing in the sense that a network of RECs, renewable energy communities, is going to be operational, especially with the RECO-Chair project, that is an initiative of 15 municipalities in Friuli Venezia Giulia. Well, they are examples of replication. The principle is the Go-Chair, that is, Chair is a renewable energy community in Italian. So there's a digital platform that is shared. The RECs creation enables a local ecosystem made of designers, installers, builders, that is added value. The municipality acts as an independent guarantor. This Go-Chair, you can find some information on the website gochair.it, enables the activation of local supply chains or local stakeholders. This is probably the main advantage linked to the communities, apart from incentives. And the citizens know whom to contact. It is a face and not a call center. Practically speaking, the municipality, the Comunità Collinare del Friuli, that is practically the replication of Mariano Alpi, but 2 orders of magnitude wider, represents 15 municipalities, 5,000 inhabitants, and it is presently funded with 5.4 million euros, not a research project, to physically build a series of RECs in the area. The scientific and technical support is by the Energy Center of the Politecnico di Torino. So, practically speaking, we have Mariano Alpi, that is the first REC of Italy, that was established in December 2020. Now a network of municipalities being created. We call them Mariano and Friends. Today, about 14,000 inhabitants are involved. We have the RECO-Chair project that has a relevant budget to build the RECs. There's a synergy between the 2 contexts, also within the Italian Forum of Energy Communities, and yesterday in Torino, the first national conference on energy communities was held at the Energy Center of the Politecnico di Torino. The approach is that in the municipality, the renewable energy community of Mariano Alpi, through GO-Chair, acts within the so-called territorial scope that is characterized by proximity, manageability, credibility. Then the municipality is signing agreements with other municipalities in Italy today, Piedmont, Friuli, Marche, Tuscany, Umbria, and Puglia. Practically, shared expression of interest to choose product or service providers are possible. Know-how is shared. Local supply chains are created in order to leave the value at local level. And this acts as a strategic data reservoir to design innovative business models. Then project management is really important because in Italy, starting from this year, 2.2 billion euros will be available just for renewable energy communities. So we are creating a network of cities that, starting from Mariano, are working together in order to get this relevant amount of money. The energy community Mariano Alpi is a community partner of the Italian Forum of Energy Communities. Is also a founding partner of Atenes, that is a no-profit association for renewable communities applied to multifamily houses, that is condominiums, that are and the cities in Italy are mainly made by condominiums. So the idea is that on one side, there's a lot of money today in Italy to build renewable energy communities. It's important to use this money with a redistributive, not predatory logic. So practically Mariano Alpi's and Friends, I mean this network of municipalities, and the RECO-Chair propose themselves catalysts for a process of rethinking business models to regenerate urban areas in Italy, with the idea of creating tangible benefits for local communities. Well, I hope I stayed within the time frame of the yes. Presentation. So practically speaking, concerning the questions, I dare say that in Italy today, there are no real obstacles or problems in creating renewable energy communities. There's a paradox. Practically, there's more money than ideas. And what is really needed is to be able to cluster initiatives, to share know-how, not to reinvent the wheel when you decide to create a REC. But the process has started, and Mariano Alpi acted as the catalyst of this process.
Okay, thank you for now for your input. And since we have another just 10 minutes, I think that we will be able to only present one from the 2 projects. So as planned, please, Mr. Piotr Lizbarski, can I ask you for presenting your follower city and to try to answer the 3 key questions that you had to face during this process.
Okay, good evening to everybody. Could you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Okay, so I try to give you very short answers for the questions. I remember only that our project was created in 2017. I mean the Słupsk bioenergy cluster, and it is responsible for the Słupsk bioenergy island, and my company, which is Wodociągi Słupsk, is responsible for realizing that project. We are just during realizing that, and now we are just going to the finish of the first part of this project, which is connected with constructing of the pipeline and 15 kV electricity line from our sewage treatment plant with CHP biogas cogenerators, connecting with first client, which is Three Waves Aqua Park, and I will try to give you the answer about the main difficulties during launching that project. In fact, the main difficult is that RED2 directive are not implemented yet to the Polish energy law. So we have many projects of implementation, but there is no final version of that changes of energy law. This is the one point. The second one is Poland didn't get money from European Recovery Plan yet, and that was planned as a base for implementing National Recovery Plan program, which would be the main support for our project. So for now, we are realizing only this first part, which is connected with spending of the money of my company and support of voivodeship program, but we still wait for the moving of that support from National Recovery Program. So these are these two difficulties. And if we talk about opportunity, during that project, there was a huge increase of energy prices, and that caused that that project will be more attractive for stakeholders. So having independent energy will be a very good advantage after that project. So this is the main opportunity, which will be very good for us. The second question, what were obstacles and success factors regarding to the involvement of the local population citizens? In fact, because of this RED2 directive, we didn't start to involve officially local population for this project. But we start to talk to the business, local business, and there is generally very good atmosphere in our city for realizing that project because of the prices of energy. So I think it will be successful. And the main success factor is attractive offer, the price of energy for stakeholders. And the second one is percentage of green energy in the mix of energy, which we will offer to our stakeholders and our customers. So I think these are 2 points which cause that the success of the project. And
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I just, yes, if there is more, please add. Gonzalo, please step in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I don't have a presentation. I hope you can hear me. Thanks for having us. My name is Gonzalo, and I work as a consultant at Get2See. We are the leading Portuguese consulting firm on climate transition issues. We are here today because we are responsible for creating the foundations for the deploy of a renewable energy community of 148 megawatts in Cascais, which is the fifth biggest municipality in Portugal. In respect of the first question, I would like to list some of the challenges we have faced. So firstly, the existence of the inexistence of any other REC in Portugal at the time we were giving the first steps. So there was no such thing as a baseline or any case study we could follow. Secondly, the lack of clarity of the Portuguese law and the absence of availability of some regulators to clarify our doubts. And thirdly, to perform a feasibility study with all the systems complexity and with all the different solutions we could have in a REC. So in regard to the opportunities found, we could say that there is a big enthusiasm and commitment of the municipal bodies to take the project forward. Also, the central power is really committed to promote the energy production, decentralization. And also, lastly, we think that with the electricity price going up, with the economic interests of citizens to invest will be higher than ever before. Regarding financing, we accomplished establishing the REC general framework. We got a grant from European City Facilities, and for the pilot implementation, we also accomplished to obtain the funding from EEA grants. So to answer the last question concerning the local population involvement, once we haven't done any attempt to involve citizens so far, we still don't have feedback on this matter. Nevertheless, we plan to do it in the nearest future throughout workshops where we intend to ask for feedback in an early stage, respecting rules and regulation, pricing, and other topics, so they can feel somehow that they are involved from the day zero, aiming to achieve high engagements with the community. Thanks. I hope you continue to have a good work.
Thank you very much, Gonzalo, for this important knowledge that you shared with us. I want to ask if Sergio, because we're briefly shortly going to a break, so if you have a quick question, Sergio, please, the floor is yours.
No, it is not a question, just to say that synthetically speaking, the conditions to create RECs in Italy today are really favorable. It is not Disneyland, clearly. There are several, you need a specific know-how, and several constraints are still present. But in my opinion, what is really important is to have a success case and, for example, a mayor as a testimonial that can help people understand. So the first step is a bit heavy, but then it is easier to convince people by making them see what is being done elsewhere.
Thank you. And saying so, I would like to invite you all for the short coffee break, and we see each other at 4:40.
Excuse me, I have another call. Is my presence necessary, or can I leave just to know how to manage?
I think that you can stay if you please, but it's not necessary, at least as I read from the agenda.
Okay, so I will join another call. Thank you, and let's see you tomorrow.
Goodbye. See you tomorrow.
Bye bye.
Thank you very much. So see you at 16:40. Welcome to our second panel, which will be very much focused on how to enable individual consumers to become prosumers. and engage in energy efficiency. I guess, yeah, most of us joined. We are very happy to have with us Jutta Paulus here today, who just joined. She is a member of the European Parliament since 2019. She is from the Alliance 90, the Greens, so representing the Green Group in the European Parliament. She is also a member of the Committee on Environment, Public Health and Safety, and also a substitute member of the ITRE committee. She's going to talk to us today about a very important topic, how to involve the most vulnerable citizens and groups in the just transition process, a group that has not always been identified always as relevant, sometimes by member states during the consultation process and sometimes difficult to reach. And how the European Union in particular can support vulnerable consumers, and what kind of mechanisms exist also at European level. So I would like to give the floor now to Jutta Paulus.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me, and happy to be back because I already have participated in quite a few conferences on citizens' energy, since this is something that's very close to my heart, having co-founded a citizens energy cooperative myself some 10 years back, I believe. And it has always been my firm belief that the transition will only be possible by activating everybody. As you said, I'm in the European Parliament now since 2019, and I'm working mainly on energy issues, but also on biodiversity. I'm also a substitute member in the Transport Committee, but they're concentrating really on the energy issues. Also, for example, I'll be shadowing the Fuel EU initiative, and this is, of course, something that's very much related to energy too. I think it has not been widely grasped that we are in the middle of the climate emergency and things are bound to get worse, and the only way out of this mess is the massive deployment of renewable energy. At least that was also my experience in the coalition talks, where I took part at the lower level, so to speak, the level where the not only national members of parliament, but also as Europeans, we were involved, of course, with our specific topics and expertise. And I had the feeling that the other two parties in Germany had not quite grasped that battling the climate emergency is a task we can only achieve all of us together, and that it's not genuinely a green issue, but should be a humanity issue. We have seen studies that it is possible by 2050 that half of the EU's electricity could be produced by citizens and citizens cooperatives, of course. And therefore, I think it was very smart that in the previous mandate, the clean energy package was already agreed with this vision, with the so giving rights to active consumers, giving rights to renewable energy communities, to cooperatives, because they are the ones that are doing stuff not only because it's profitable, but also because it comes from their heart. The striking example, of course, is Germany, where until, let's say, 2012, around, most of the facilities of renewable energy were owned by citizens and farmers. And the reason for this was, I mean, I have made this experience myself. My first solar panels went on my roof 20 years ago. So I'm now finishing the phase where I got a fixed in tariff. And back then I went to my bank and I said, okay, I want to put those solar panels on my roof, and this is the law, and I will receive a fixed feed-in tariff. No problem. And they looked over my calculations, and then they said, well, we have to look at this a bit closer, please come back tomorrow. And when I came back, they said, okay, we found no errors there, but you're not making really money with that. We have much better investment opportunities for you. And I was like, yes, maybe, but that's not what I want to do. And therefore, I think there were a lot of people like me who said, I want to do it, even though there are much more profitable investment opportunities to invest in. And basically that was also the reason why the big companies did not invest in that much, because they said, well, we can make much more money with our old fossil fuel assets. And now we have the this really good clean energy package where the rights of the active consumers are enshrined, but the challenge is that member states have to transpose it into national law. I think there will be a lot of talk about that in another workshop, so I will not elaborate too much on that. But I think the challenge will also be to make sure that vulnerable consumers, poor households will not be left behind in this movement. And I think one way to go forward here would, for example, be the cooperative approach, where you have a very democratic approach on a company, where at least in Germany, a cooperative is characterized by every member having one voice, regardless whether he or she has invested 100 euros or 10,000 euros. And that's something that's really also protective for vulnerable consumers. But what we would need is that those vulnerable consumers, who often don't even have 100 euro to invest, have the possibility to get a grant, a state-backed grant or loan. A loan would even suffice, because of course you get you're getting profits from your investment in renewable energy or energy efficiency. So this would be a possibility to involve vulnerable consumers. And also a field which has not so much been tackled by cooperatives is, of course, energy efficiency. And there we have a very important point, because often it is the most vulnerable households that live in the worst insulated buildings, and that then have to invest a lot of their monthly income into heating. So first should be try to involve as many people as possible by giving state-backed loans to become a member of an energy community. And secondly, invest money from the state or also from communities into insulation of buildings, especially for vulnerable households. That would be, from my perspective, two very important points. And as I will be the shadow for the Energy Efficiency Directive, energy efficiency is something that's helping mostly the most vulnerable consumers, because the cheapest energy is the energy which we do not have to produce in the first place. And there we have a very large field which should be tackled, because who is able to buy the newest appliances which use much less energy than the older ones? It is not the poor households. And there I think we should find ways to, for example, have a common procurement of energy efficient lightings or fridges or household appliances where vulnerable consumers can participate. And I'm very sorry, but I have to run because there has been a shift in the agenda and I'm already late for my next meeting, but thank you very much for having me. Bye-bye.
Many thanks, Jutta, for sharing these insights and further visions on how to involve more vulnerable consumers. Thank you for finding the time to participate in our conference today.
Thank you.
So now we have with us the next speaker, Max Gruenig. Are you there already?
Yes, I'm here.
Max?
I'm here. I see I have, my camera is not working properly. I'll try that again.
We hear you, but we don't see you.
I see that. I think I will log out and log in again. Could be that my camera is blocked by some other software. So let me try that. I'll be back in a second, just a second.
The time we are waiting Max to join, something about him. He's a climate and energy economist with expertise and experience in the US and Europe. And he has already been coordinating the transatlantic civil society dialogue on environment and climate cooperation. So he has this kind of transatlantic experience, or how to foster a civil society dialogue between the US and, here he is, between the US and the EU. He was also the president of Ecologic Institute, the US office of the Ecologic Institute from 2015 until 2020, and has also worked with Ecologic Institute Berlin, the ones that has launched this transatlantic dialogue, as I already mentioned. And he's a founder of an initiative called POCACITO, about which he's going to speak right now, about this engagement tool. So Max, the floor is yours now.
Oh, thank you very much, Radostina. Thank you. Thank you all for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. And of course, also apologies for the hiccup with the camera. I'm glad it's working now. So yeah, I'm speaking to you from Washington, D.C. It's a pleasure to be part of the SCORE final conference. In my past life, I've been part of many EU projects, now fewer, but still some. And this is actually the core of my personal engagement, is the transatlantic cooperation on climate and energy. And that's, there's of course a lot of work to be done still. I mean, there's also a lot of differences, but there's also a lot of common ground, especially since there are similarities and the challenges in terms of energy efficiency, smart grids or demand management, and of course integration of renewable energy. These are issues on both sides of the Atlantic. So POCACITO is a network, it's a platform, and we do have a lot of members in the wider urban environment in the United States. They are sustainability managers, energy managers, also people running local utilities. And we have the same on the European side, joining us from cities and also regional offices, of course. So in Europe, regions are more relevant. In the US, this concept is still growing. And that's actually a very important point, because regional cooperation, collaboration is still something where the US can learn a lot, in particular with regard to the energy transition. So we have very active municipalities, so cities, municipalities, and of course at the state level and then the federal level too. But of course, what we need when we look at energy transitions, we need to look at the regions. And that's where a lot of power is in Europe coming from, is that subnational, but also sub-state level, but bigger than the municipality. So this is something that's still in development here on the American side. And the network in itself, of course, in the past has been also with a lot of in-person interactions, meaning we had a lot of meetings and study tours and bringing people from the US to Europe and the other way around. But because of COVID and the ongoing restrictions, we have shifted more and more to online. And the network also always had this online component, which is really, really important for maintaining the consistency, because of course we can't travel all the time across the Atlantic. That would be also very unsustainable. So we do have a lot of online interactions, being webinars or online conferences like this one, but also having a network where people interact in private, basically, meaning not in private with two people, but within the network. And it's actually very interesting to see also that this network, as opposed to many other networks, is not by institution, but by person. So when it's a personal connection to the network. So when people change their positions, which they do in the US even more than in Europe, they're still within the network, but they might be in a different place, they might be in a different role. So this is also kind of interesting because of course people grow, people change. It's both a challenge for the network in a sense, because we might have a city in and then the city might not be in anymore because the person is moving to a different place. But it also opens up a lot of new opportunities. So in general, of course, we're most active on the coasts. That's just a thing in the US. I mean, the most progressive areas are on the East Coast and then California, but we do also have a considerable amount of people in the middle of the country and including the South. And that's very interesting too. The South is growing very rapidly and energy consumption is growing very rapidly, but also at the same time, climate pressures are really intense in the South, both in terms of heat, storms and flooding. And so there is a real need for changing how things are being done. And that's very difficult in the US in particular still. And we do hope we can contribute a little bit to this. Of course, we know we don't have that many tools. We don't have funding programs, etc. So it's a very soft power that we wield here. Yeah, and that I mean we can go on, but I can also take questions. I don't know if you have questions. Otherwise, of course, I can talk a little bit about our past efforts in trying to also communicate European ideas, in particular about energy efficiency approaches. So there is a lot of interest in the US, in particular with regard to concepts such as passive house or plus energy houses. But unfortunately, the majority of the interest is is interest. It's not implementation so much. And part of that is the difference in the energy costs. So energy costs are, of course, much lower in the US compared to Europe on average. And that's a challenge for making this economically viable. Part of my work is also, or has been, in the LEED certification, has a working group for cities and communities, for certifying cities and communities. And that's a little bit of an alternative approach to certifications we have in Europe on sustainable buildings. And LEED certification is also known in Europe a little bit, but it's of course much more America focused. But while it's mostly for buildings and new developments, it also is available for cities and communities. So that's an approach to try to get them on board. So, and I see a question coming about private funding and the private maybe market and the differences maybe in Europe and in the US. So in the US, we do have very limited public funding in general, even though, of course, the US federal budget is huge, it's enormous. But if you look at it, for example, the Department of Energy is a very small budget, and most of that budget goes to the nuclear side. I mean, nuclear energy, and so very little money actually available for funding energy efficiency. There's a loan program, and you might know the name Jigar Shah is running this. He comes from the private sector, so this is very good. They're good signs, but if you look at the total need, this is way below what's necessary. And of course, in the US too, we're mostly talking, when we talk about lighthouse projects, we're talking about new construction. We're talking very rarely about retrofitting existing buildings. This is much less of an issue or a reality. And so private money is very important. There's definitely a lot more power also with developers, and that's also a challenge, of course. It's a lot more explicitly market driven, and that's sometimes confusing even for me, even though I've lived here now a few years. Like whenever they talk about community projects, and then I imagine that it's all bottom up and you know, citizen owned, but community projects can be still very, in the American language, can be still very money driven, market driven, investor driven. We also have a lot more private equity companies now in the rental market. I see this is also a trend in Europe. which is both. I mean, I don't want to judge this, right? It's in a way, it can be good because it can bring a lot of money that maybe an individual owner doesn't have, but it also creates a lot of challenges because they have high expectations maybe on short-term returns, and that might kind of hinder longer-term investments in the building assets, in the infrastructure. So this is a trend. On the other hand, public housing is it's a very nearly inexistent in the US. It exists in some cities, but it's in decline. And what's done mostly is subsidizing private developers for low-income affordable housing, which then again leaves the whole power, the decision-making with other people. It's a real challenge we see in a lot of places, is to communicate this need to think affordable housing together with energy efficiency, together with having zero energy or net positive houses, because very often they think this separately. They think we need to build affordable housing, and there's a different office thinking about energy efficient buildings. And so the money is spent on one thing and then there's no money for the other. And that's a real drama because, of course, you know, even in the US, a house lasts a couple of years, even though the average life expectancy for buildings is much lower, or is lower in the US. And we have a faster turnover in buildings, which is good in a way. You know, in Germany, for example, I know Germany best, but one of the problems is that the buildings are so good, so they last longer, so the turnover is very slow. Here it's the opposite, so buildings last maybe 8 years or so. It's kind of ridiculous, but it also means you can actually, when you change the code for new buildings, this has much faster impact. So this is an advantage. It's of course terrible in terms of resource efficiency because there's so much being thrown away in terms of building materials. So it's a real challenge. And again, retrofitting is really, really difficult here, given the economics. And but yeah, there are interesting developments. There's more and more states allow what they call community solar. So where you can buy into private developer again, offering a solar part ownership and solar tariff where you are co-producer, and that's coming. Again, I say community solar, and this sounds very, you know, from a European perspective, sounds like it's cooperative, but it's not always. Very often these are for-profit developments, and very rarely they're cooperatives, but there are interesting cooperative models here too. So this is just a niche segment here, but it exists and it's growing. So it's positive. I'll try to see. Yeah, the multifamily investment in mobility, that's a real problem. So I said already the average life of the buildings is shorter, but also the average time people spend in a building, even if they own it, is much shorter in the US. And that's of course a challenge because even though, for example, installing solar, installing triple glazed windows, which are very, very rare in the US to install. But even if you do these things, you increase the value of the home. And so economically, it makes sense. But a lot of people don't think that way. They don't see that yet. And so many people don't have that feeling that they need to build a home for life. So that limits us already for the single family homes. For multifamily homes, that's definitely another big challenge because very often, as I said, I mean, very often they are owned by private equity or large companies, and they often don't see the benefit in having, for example, just rooftop solar already. I mean, it exists. But I'm in the District of Columbia, and that has actually favorable legislation for rooftop solar. Not every state does have favorable legislation. So this is a crazy thing, right? There are states here that actually hinder the rollout of solar. And as crazy as it sounds, it's 2021. and we just had Glasgow.
Could you come to your final remark?
Yes, absolutely. I'm sorry, I wasn't watching the time. So I'm just saying it is very challenging, even in the best states here and the best circumstances, like in Washington, D.C., there's still a lot of challenges to overcome, even though it's a market where there is a lot of money in it. So there is technically also money for investments, like in Washington, D.C. Yeah, that's my perspective from the United States.
Many thanks for this comparison and highlighting some of the developments and also best practices in the US, in particular in the building and retrofitting. I think, yeah, it's also important what you mentioned, that we shouldn't look only one-sided at energy efficiency per se, but the whole sustainability concept, which includes also the quality of construction material. And that's also relates with with the question of affordability and different schemes for realizing that the role of public and private funding. We'll remain further at this discussion later, but now I would like to give the floor to our next partner, Kirsten Röber from CARITAS Verband Frankfurt, who is representing also the project Stromspar Czech of CARITAS Germany. She is also involved, and particularly in our work in the inclusion of vulnerable households. And today she's going to talk about the student participation in our pilot project in Essen.
Okay, thank you, Radostina. Just share my screen with you.
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. So good evening to everybody. And thank you for staying with us, though it's a bit late, and I think some of you are already a bit tired, but yeah. Nevertheless, I have a little talk about the renewable energy community engagement of students in a cooperative within the SCORE pilot Essen, and Mirco Sieg 2 hours ago already introduced to you the pilot, so there will be some redundance, but I think nevertheless it will be worth listening. But please give me 1 minute before to explain who we are, who or what is this strange Stromspar Check. The Stromspar Check is a very comprehensive project to mitigate energy poverty. And within this project, we provide energy saving advice, plus the installation of energy saving products at home and free of charge. And if Jutta Paulus would be here, maybe she would be happy to hear that there is a program where we give this huge package and free of charge to low-income households across Germany. And we do this with formerly long-term unemployed people who receive a specific training. Just to give you some figures, but before, yeah, we are a joint project, again, of the huge CARITAS Association in Germany, together with the Federal Association of German Energy and Climate Protection Agencies. We exist in over 150 places across the country, and we have advised, since our beginning, almost 380,000 households. And in long term, we have reduced more than 600,000 tons of CO2. And if this is interesting for you, a household can save up to 225 euros yearly through our advice. But now let's switch to the Essen pilot. As consortium partner in SCORE, we support the Essen pilot, and in particular a working group around the vocational training school, the BKO, where in the context of SCORE, you have heard about it, we are going to install a huge PV system on the roof. The BKO is owned by the city of Essen, has 39 vocational trainings, for instance, in civil engineering or media and printing technology, around 3,000 students, mostly between 70 to 28 years. They can also be a little bit older, up to 30 years. So it's not a normal school, it's a vocational training school. So the students are a little bit older. 100 teachers, and what is quite good for a project, for our project, that the school is already engaged in sustainability project as Schule der Zukunft, school of the future. And as working group, we deal with the important question: how can the students participate in a planned renewable energy community? And to this question, I'd like to show you the following graphic, and Mirco has shown it also, but let us have a look again on it. Here you see the three main shareholders of the operating company that owns and operates the PV installation: the Franz Sales House for people with disability, the Sport Club, and the city of Essen. And as a fourth player, we are going to set up a cooperative with own legal personality, which is open mainly for the students at the BKO, but also for engaged teachers or individuals from the Franz Sales House or the Sports Club. And within the co-op, a low investment is possible, for instance, up to 100 euros. And in case of a really low income household, it can even be topped by a matching contribution. And regarding participation, the membership in this cooperative facilitates students an indirect participation in the energy community. It guarantees participation in the shareholder group through a legal representative elected by the students. And this is important. The cooperative works as a bundler of interest for the whole student body. And at the same time, the co-op members become activators for all students in order to approach and engage in the energy community. And in this context, I will show you later a further idea of student engagement. But first to the financial benefits. Firstly, the main shareholders benefit from the discounted electricity supply. And as we have already mentioned, as the cooperative don't pay for the electricity, it's logical that it can't benefit from lower energy costs. And secondly, all shareholders, included the corporation, generate dividends, through the future resale of the surplus electricity. That is the theory. And thirdly, the benefit of an energy efficiency premium, which in theory will be paid out by the city of Essen to all students, which rewards savings through a more energy efficient consumer behavior. Let's have a quick look on the economic activities of the cooperative. As you know, a cooperative has to work at least sustainable. And the plan is that it would offer 4 different fields of business activities to the energy community. Firstly, public relation to promote the concept of renewable energy communities, energy sharing and student engagement. Secondly, the support and maintenance of the PV system, not in, let's say, deeply engineering skills. It's more task-like to the remote control of the installation or delivering data to the energy supplier. Thirdly, they would do energy efficiency advising. This is a field that would be supported by the Stromsparcheck, the energy saving project in Essen, one of our offices in Essen. And the cooperative members would be enabled to analyze power consumption or demonstrate energy efficient behavior to the energy community. And lastly, the co-op as multiplier, which brings, let's say, the whole idea of a student-based energy cooperative to other schools. And with this slide, I show you another level of participation. It is a further low threshold option for students at the BKO. And as far as I know, it's a quite special option which just exists in Germany. What you see here on right-hand side is the initiative of the school to set up an educational project, which is named Student Cooperative. And but this is indeed a bit weird. It is not a real cooperative with their own legal personality. It just simulates a cooperative. And what's special, it can only be recognized as student cooperative in coalition or in a tandem with a real co-op, here the BKO. And opposed to the characteristics of the real co-op, which you see in the left box, the educational project or student co-op is just for students. It has no legal personality, as I said. The educational institution retains the responsibility for the project and not the members themselves. It requires, as I said, a real co-op for the tandem. The students receive credits for their engagement and there are limited obligations. There's no investment required and the student engagement is more flexible and just part of the curriculum. As I said, it's a low threshold option to activate more students of the school and an offer maybe for those students and classes who first like to have a sniff of the whole thing and maybe become later members in the real cooperative. I'd like to conclude my talk by summarizing the incentives for participation. And as you know, they play quite an important role when we talk about engagement strategies. For the real energy cooperative, we have the mentioned dividends, even though with just 3.3% ownership, it's more symbolic than economically attractive. We have the energy efficiency premium as a kind of a reward for consuming less energy, the additional income through the members' business activities. Members, and beside the financial incentives, members have a say and can co-determine the orientation of the operating company, and members can learn and apply skills in a real business and project work. For the student project, in tandem with the real co-op, we have again the premium, which could be used for equipment and social community activities, like, for instance, school trips. The insights in business and project work of a cooperative, the option to receive academic recognition for the engagement, and learning skills in tandem with a real cooperative. And last but not least, for both levels of engagement applies, the students become part of an energy community or be part of a pioneer project in electricity sharing. And students can individually contribute to climate change.
Kirsten, one final remark.
Yeah, this is my final remark. This is from CARITAS side. I hope I could give you a quick insight of our Essen pilot and in particular the student engagement. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. That was quite interesting also to hear about also the students' participation in the energy cooperative. Right now we have our final speaker today. This is Dr. Luis Ramirez Camargo. He's a senior researcher at Vrije Universiteit Brussels, the place I did my PhD, so good to see someone from there. And he joined the Sustainable Energy Communities Research Group also in 2020. He has been also working in the development of the group's optimization framework for the design and operation of multi-energy microgrids. And they have been already coordinating or taking part in some Horizon 2020 projects, which include Renaissance and Interconnect. So Luis is going to talk about more the rural type of smaller projects Vega de Valcarce and Venaus from Italy. So Luis, the floor is yours.
I think I recognize that there are two main advantages of being the last one. The first one of them is everyone is super happy because after that there is food and drinks usually. And the second advantage is that I can build up on the content that other people have presented already. And I would like to start relating to two main concepts that have been presented here, the idea of the sister projects and the idea of the follower city, because somehow I'm representing both at this point. Just a few words on how we are a sister project. Well, you hear already I'm working at the BUV in Brussels, and we have this project called Renaissance that is literally a sister of SCORE. We are also working with some pilots in the continent, and on top of that, we would like to have some replication sites, in total 10 of them, some of them in Europe, some of them in the rest of the world. And this concept replication site is basically the same concept that you have for a follower city. And the rest of the talk that I have prepared is a talk about Vega de Valcarce that was already introduced by Jajesh like 1 hour ago. But he had to do it in a turbo mode, and that's kind of difficult. Everyone working in these pilots is sure that have been investing several years of work here, and put it in like 10 or 5 minutes of presentation is kind of challenging. So to make the best possible use of our time, I will try to just jump in aspects that I think are important that were not mentioned there. And I will definitely, try to say thank you to Jajesh and the Revival Association, because this replication site or follower city would have been completely impossible without them. And obviously the cooperation of the municipality. So some details that you might have not had the chance to have, and I think they're very important. This is not only a rural area located in the north of Spain, with less than 900 inhabitants in the entire municipality. So the village we are working at around 200 inhabitants. But they also have issues with the decreasing population, and the average age of this population is 56 years. And as you see on the right side of the slide, the demographic pyramid is quite opposite of an optimal one. So there is, let's say, lots of people that are already in pension in there, and there is very little new young people coming to the place. And I think this is very important, because if we manage to run an energy community here, there is lots of space for replication all around Spain and also elsewhere in Europe, where this situation is happening and is also very problematic. Some small comments more on the case. Well, you know, it's a rural area. Jajesh already presented some more nicer pictures of the place, but it's actually quite livable. It's a place where people go out on the street and talk to you, and I think that's probably a key element that we need for an engagement of this type of community, to really get to people, to this type of population. We cannot expect that everything is going to happen online. We probably have to go and talk to them and present to them and explain. And something that maybe was missing also from the Jess presentation, there was no time for that, is this place is quite rainy. North of Spain is famous for that, but the photovoltaic generation is quite high. So you have radiation there's over 1,500 kilowatt hours per square meter. What is a lot. In Brussels we will dream with that kind of number. And something that maybe is also missing is that not everything is positive concerning renewables in there, but there is also some sort of opposition. You see a picture on the right. There is a movement against large wind turbines related with other political issues. But the messaging here is that not necessarily, when you talk to people and try to engage with people, you have to be cautious, because, well, a lot has happened in the past that might make difficult this job of trying to construct an energy community. So you know this already. I think the main issue here is that there is a lot of uncertainty. You have a population that is basically willing to do everything that is good for them, but since the transposition is not completed, it's quite difficult to bring certainty to the place in planning an energy community. So what we tried to do with them was to remember maybe this 100 kilowatt peak solar system is something that this idea was before us in the past. But what we tried there was to create a configuration of an energy community, testing different sizes and different types of stakeholders, because it was not super clear who would like to participate and under which conditions. So we play around a lot with whom will be actually the member of the community. The case is very basic. The idea is to construct a photovoltaic installation on the school building, and for instance, provide electricity for the school, but not only for the school, but also for the municipality, for residential users and for commercial buildings. I think one of the main challenges here, as I just mentioned, was the obtention of data. I think this is also a problem that happens with all our pilots that we have. It's very difficult to know which is the demand of the particular individuals, because yes, smart meters are there, but not everywhere. And second, when they are available, it doesn't mean that the data is actually available. So in this case, we had to play around, work a lot with the municipality, work a lot with the ESO and with other local companies to actually be able to construct the profiles of the municipality and the school, and construct some assumptions about residential and commercial buildings. And it's also a key element of this to understand the electricity tariffs, which could be also quite challenging. These are not only difficult to understand for, let's say, normal people, but also for technicians. And that was something we have to fight against with. Some numbers here, I don't want to go deep into them. The important message here is the demand that this has to be covered in a year. Is well suited for a photovoltaic system of up to 100 kilowatt peak, and the costs for PVs and battery, these prices that you see there are local ones. So it's also quite affordable. What's the starting conditions for the place? So as I mentioned, we play around with multiple scenarios, starting just with the municipality up to the case that you see here: municipality plus a school plus 100 households plus 5 commercial buildings, and testing out if there is any sense installing this PV installation and batteries. And we did all this conducting a manca. When I see this, I have to think of Sara, the very first presentation of the day, because at the end, we're doing a very similar job, only our tools have different names. In this case, it's also multi-criteria analysis. And I think the message here is, we work a lot with people to identify objectives, to understand which are the options for the community, and to make a comparison of these options. But what we see here is a total success, because a population of 200 people, we got more than 50 participants for our survey and around 25 participants for a workshop that we run. What it means, we definitely have an idea of what the entire community would like to have. Very shortly to this, we analyze in total, we discovered in total 18 objectives that belong to different stakeholders. What we saw that is common to most of them is that there is a basic interest in having a reduction of the energy bill, and therefore, while energy communities are not there to make profit for anyone, they definitely have to have a business case that allows to reduce the energy bills for the members. And this figure here can be also summarized into we have different sizes of communities that we test in every single option. We summarize that for the people into 2, but we actually test like 1,000 possible combinations of what can be done in the community. And what we see in general is, that's the yellow line, if the larger is the community, given all the constraints that we have, the more advantageous it is to reduce the bill, the cost per kilowatt hour consumed. And with that, I come to the conclusions. We saw that in any case, the best idea to use this electricity is to have some self-consumption. Something that I just mentioned, that given the constraints, increasing the number of members of the community improve the business case. There is a potential saving for the electricity bills of up to 40%. That's information that you already have from Rajesh. Batteries don't seem viable in any way, but that's something, well, other people is testing. In our cases, what we see is, well, you probably have to make the technical analysis first before installing this kind of systems, because it's very difficult under the given conditions, unless, for example, it is planned that the tariffs will change. In this particular case, with this nice solar radiation, a return of investment of 10% will be possible. We have payback time of up to 10 years. People, probably the last three conclusions are interconnected, because we are still selecting a governance model that will allow the energy community, because everyone is saying yes, but is still missing the clear concept that we have to follow there. And what we also notice a lot is that the real implementation of this energy community requires some sort of a leader, of a booster, and mainly for this kind of population, we expect that, for example, the municipality takes the role. They have all of the support of well, revival and of the two projects, Renaissance and Score. I hope also from Congress in the near future. I don't know if you are already in contact, but you also have these desks for Spain, and I think there are probably chances there to, well, make this community a reality. Compared to all the cases that we run in Belgium, this particular case for this kind of population can actually work quite well. And with that, I will finish the sharing, and I hope I left a minute for questions. I don't know. I hope so.
Many thanks, Luis, for finishing with these examples in particular, with the benefits in particular of the energy, why people should join an energy community, and that you highlighted quite well. So this was the end of our panel and discussion today of the conference. I would like to thank all your participants for the comprehensive and interesting presentations today, and also for your dedications. I would like to thank also for our audience, and in particular for the people that stayed till the end. Tomorrow we'll have one more exciting day where we'll have presentations live from the Energy Center at Politecnico di Torino. And so we'll have really this kind of hybrid form of some of us being live, and some of us again joining online. Thanks again. Jens, would you like to add something?
Yeah, thank you, Radostina. I would just like to add a quick forecast on the day. So we are starting tomorrow with Achil Hanoset from DG Energy, who's giving a quick statement on the state of transposition from the Commission view. We also have Dr. Dörte Fouquet, who is the director of EREF, who will open the panel on opportunities and synergies, especially with regard to energy electricity sharing. But this already leads over to the fourth panel then, which is about business opportunities for professional actors from the energy world. And there we will have Enda Gallagher. I'm just mentioning here the key impulses opening each of the sessions. Enda Gallagher from Ireland, that will give us a summary of best practice from Ireland, namely the Irish support scheme, which is really remarkable with regard to what has happened, what has not happened in the other member states. So I think these are, and then of course, as Radostina just mentioned, there will be the roundtable discussion, which is a live event, which will be broadcasted. But I think all these keynotes, and of course also all the other speakers, are worth joining. So I really hope to see hopefully all of you tomorrow. And I would also thank the hosts, the Politecnico, for the excellent organization, because in these COVID times things are not easy, And I think this was all very swift and smooth. So once more, Patrizia, Sara, and the whole team, thank you very much indeed, and looking forward to day 2, to the morning tomorrow then, with new fresh heads. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.